Would you guys believe me if I said that I've been talking to the camera for 5 minutes and I hadn't pressed record? Well, it happened. Hi, it's the weekend. I'm filming a video. So what we're gonna do today is I want to do something that I've seen a ton of booktubers do. Well, probably not a ton, like 5. But that's a lot considering I don't watch that many booktubers. Like, I have my favorites, but every time somebody does this, I get so excited. I don't know why. It's probably some sort of a bad instinct that I have, but it looks entertaining. And I would like to entertain people, and I want to see, I purposefully stay away from this sort of thing in my spare time, because what we're going to do is we're going to react to 1-star reviews of my favorite books. And normally what happens when I read a negative review of one of my favorite books is they get very upset because they are like something that I truly admire. And then when I see somebody getting something very wrong about it, or like writing wrong, there's a way to write a respectful 1-star review, and there's a lot of people who don't know how to do that. So when I see one of those, I'm like, okay, I need to move on so I don't have a burst of aneurysm in my brain and then die. What I've tried to do is I've picked 5 books where I don't think I will be that upset, if upset at all, if I see people reacting negatively, because these are books that I feel like there's reasons why people don't like them. I can clearly see those reasons, and yet they appeal to me on a very strong level. They're all 5-star books. So, but they're not books that I would like defend with my life and not accept a negative thought. And I know we all have different tastes, but there's so many people on the internet who are so unself-reflective and really just do not understand the difference between not liking something and it being bad. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through these 5 books. I'm gonna try and keep it to under 30 minutes, and we're gonna see what happens. And hopefully I don't bust an aneurysm and die on camera. If you're watching this, that didn't happen because I edited it and uploaded it. With that in mind, got my Sid Bookworm the Reader mug. If you haven't watched Sid's channel, I'll link it below. It's very comforting for me. She's a very soothing screen presence. Okay, let's go. First book we've got, as you can see on your screen, but I'll hold it up anyway. Oops, because let me move over because I'm gonna put it over here, is Piranesi. Is it Piranesi or Piranesi? I like Piranesi better, but I think it might be Piranesi. I'm gonna look it up for this video and put it down here, the correct pronunciation of this guy's name, because the character in this is named after an actual dude. Let's look at Piranesi. So if you're not aware of what this book is about, I'm not sure how you wouldn't be aware, but just in case, this is a book. It is a speculative fiction fantasy book by Susanna Clarke, and it is about this guy named Piranesi who lives in what he calls the house, which is an endless structure it's an enormous structure full of columns and statues and water, and he's basically there by himself, and he thinks it's the world, and he thinks that there's only been like 11 people in the world ever, and we're reading from his journal, and it's very clear that something's going on with his memory, and he's not, like, something's going on. So you read this book and you're from his perspective, so you have to sort of piece things together yourself. Anyway, it's great. I love it so much I need to reread it, but let's look at some reviews for people who hated it. Okay, so let's scroll. I'm gonna scroll down. Let's scroll down past everyone's reviews. Most of my friends like this book, so that's why they're still my friends. Just kidding. Okay, so the first review, let's see if this is a good one to look at. Okay, so this one's nice. She's apologizing to everyone who likes the book, so that's good. Obviously, I'm an outlier and my thoughts here are decidedly in the minority, so if you feel differently, please don't throw rotten vegetables at me. I won't, because you're very polite. Thank you. Going into Piranesi, I had nothing but great things about it. How it's riveting and unputdownable, I agree. How no one had ever seen a story like this before. How the twist is going to blow my mind. Unfortunately, none of those turned out to be true for me. For one thing, and please forgive me for saying this, I just don't find endless descriptions of walls, statues, vegetables, tides, fish, and birds to be that interesting. Okay, so I get what she's saying, but I think the problem here is that maybe she just didn't vibe with the writing. And like, I think if you look down, she says that the writing, well, no, she's saying the writing isn't meant to be understood or remembered. I don't agree with that. So like I said earlier, like the whole point of the way that it's written is that you're meant to be in the dark with Piranesi Sorry, I'm just saying it like that because that's my preferred pronunciation, and if I'm wrong, I'm sorry. He has a personality, he's clever, he's curious, he's kind, he's so lovable, and because no one is watching him, it is just his pure him. Like, there's a pureness to Piranesi in the book that you don't get with people when they're with other people. Like, you get conflict, so he exists in a vacuum, essentially, even though there's a person in there who's the antagonist called the other in the book. That's what he calls him anyway. But I mean, it's very clear that by the end of that book, I knew exactly who Piranesi was, and I felt so much for him. And sure, he's describing his surroundings, but if that's all you're focusing on, then yeah, you're not gonna like it. You have to get to underneath what he's describing to see him, and that's the heart of the book. And if you can't do that, or if the writing isn't doing that for you, then yeah, you're probably not gonna like it. I do not agree that it was a slog. I had found it really hard to put down, like really hard to put down. I appreciate the ending of this. I know not every book is for every reader, and this one definitely isn't for me. I marvel at stories that take complex and intricate ideas and turn them into something easily understood. This is the opposite. I disagree. It takes a fairly simple concept that's been done many times before and somehow manages to turn it into the most obscure and confounding tale. No, it's very clear by the end. Sorry it didn't work for you, dude, but you're very polite and I appreciate that. This one's gonna be short and sweet, I think. I rarely write bad reviews, but this was one of the most boring and repetitive books I've ever read. Halls, vestibules, statues. People are really focusing on the setting. Albatross, halls, vestibules, statues, all blah, blah, blah. So goddamn boring, tedious, and overhyped. Okay, well, that's not all that was going on. You just missed a lot, so sorry. Okay, let's see what this person's saying. It sounded whimsical and the cover gave me Greek god vibes, which are my favorite. I don't know why it did that. Unfortunately, I DNF'd it. Okay, well, you haven't finished it, so I feel like your opinion isn't that valid. You barely even got to what was going on. This is definitely a book that you have to commit. Like, you can't just go in and be like, well, I don't like this after 10%, because of course you're not going to understand what's going on. You're not meant to understand what's going on in the first 10, 25% of this book. The catharsis of this book comes when you as the reader, if not Piranesi, he's a little slower on the uptake, but he doesn't have our perspective, comes to understand what's going on and the character that's illuminated when he does that, when he does that. And obviously this person just was like, I don't have the patience to find out if I actually like this or not. You can't with this book. So if you guys haven't read Piranesi, you have to commit to the whole thing. You just have to. Like, don't read the first 3 pages. If you can't stand the style, just back out. But if you're gonna go, then go, because I mean you can't DNF it. You can't and expect to know what's going on. And I'm a DNFer now, so I can say that with authority. I approve of DNFing, but in this case, no. The writing is very purple. No, it's not. I don't think this person knows what purple means. Let me see if I can find a sample of the writing. It's very stripped down and because he's not writing to impress anyone. He's writing for himself to keep a log of his life. It's a journal. So now he is a scientist though, so there is a more formal tone. So maybe that's what this person was responding to, but it is not purple. Purple is like, God, who's guilty of purple prose? I don't read a lot of it because it really turns me off, because I feel like you're just decorating a corpse kind of thing with flowers. At a certain point, the thing underneath is stinky. Why are you dressing it up? That's my feeling. I don't know if that even makes sense, and it doesn't apply to every book with purple prose, obviously. Erin Morgan's turn. Her writing is very flowery and leans toward the purplier, but she's a case where it's acceptable because she has tons of substance underneath. So the flowery writing is just like sprinkles on top of the cupcake, if you will. It's not the entire thing. Here's a sample of the writing. This is from page 7. A list of all the people who have ever lived and what is known of them. So obviously he's very confused. Since the world began, it is certain that there have existed 15 people. Possibly there have been more, but I am a scientist and must proceed according to the evidence. That's not flowery. It is a little formal, but it's not flowery. Of the 15 people whose existence is verifiable, only myself and the other are now living. I will now name the 15 people and give, where relevant, their positions. First person, myself. I believe that I am between 30 and 35 years of age. I'm approximately 1.83 meters tall and of a slender build. Okay, so you see it going on, like it's very plain. I really think that she is a very talented writer to do that because it is plain prose. The fact that you still get so much personality from it is very impressive according to me. So anyway, I could not disagree further with this review. Let's do one or two more. I can't help it if I need a plot and something I can hold on to. It slipped through my fingers into the 43rd vestibule to the right of a statue covered in seaweed. LOL. It doesn't really have a plot. It is a very vibesy book. The plot is you trying to figure out where he is, and if that's not something that's interested to you, and the philosophy of it, she's got a very like, I mean, there's a meaning behind it, which is PIRANESI and the meaning of life, essentially. That's pretty accurate. Weird and unforgivably boring. It's like reading my ATM receipt in Esperanto. Well, that's just sad for that person because it's not boring at all. For readers of Neil Gaiman's The Ocean at the End of the Lane and fans of Madeline Miller's Circe. Whoever wrote this blurb is a marketing genius because it's the only reason I picked this book up, but unfortunately they clearly have a pretty significant crack problem. That's not appropriate, because what in the ever-living fuck even is this boring-ass garbage fire of a book, bearing no tangible resemblance to either of those stories that are so far superior they might as well exist on some entirely other transcendental plane of enlightenment, and I don't even like Gaiman's that much. Jesus. This person clearly just doesn't get it also, but I will agree with them that marketers really do a disservice a lot of the time to the books they are trying to market, because if you're gonna like pick and choose books to compare something to get people interested, you have to do it accurately, or the people who are coming to your book are gonna leave angry and disappointed and write 1-star reviews on Goodreads. I agree. It's the Ocean at the End of Lane, I could see that one because it's a first-person short little novel that's all about the vibes and being reflective. I could see that one, but it is in no way like Circe, in no way at all. And it sounds like that's what this person was really drawn to. It sounds like, when was this published? This was published in 2020, and Circe was published like 3 or 4 years before that, I think. So yeah, they were clearly just like using the name of Circe to draw people in disingenuously, which sucks. Okay, like if you're gonna name drop a book, pick accurate ones, please. Marketers, do better at your jobs. It's literally your entire job. Do better at it. So we're gonna move on because I can just keep going. So that was PIRANESI. Read it. It's an excellent book. I should reread that really soon because it's pretty short. The next book we're gonna do is Gideon the Ninth. I freaking love this book. I have never fallen in love with a character so quickly as I did Gideon. From like page 1, I was like, oh God, I love this character so much. I would die for her. I'm sure you guys are aware of Gideon the Ninth. You've seen it everywhere because people who love this book are very loud about it, myself included. But this is a book about Gideon, and she lives in a world where there are 9 planets, and each of those planets is a house. So Gideon lives on the 9th house. The 9th house is full of necromancers, and they guard this thing called the Locked Tomb. That is the job of their house, to guard this tomb and make sure that the person in the tomb never rises again. So that's the setup. Gideon is an orphan. She has been raised by people who despise her, and she despises everyone else in the house. The house is very small and decrepit and dying because all of the children mysteriously were killed 1 or 2 years after Gideon was born. So it's a very lonely, dying house. And Gideon has a nemesis called Harrow, and Harrow is the heir of the 9th house. And Gideon's always trying to escape, and one day she does an escape attempt and gets caught, but Harrow makes her a deal because apparently the, oh my God, I can't believe I just forgot his name. The emperor dude. What is his name? Oh no. Anyway, there's a ruler of all 9 houses, and I can't remember. He's like a god, basically. He's a god emperor, essentially. That's not his name. He's making a contest. Everyone has magic in this world, and necromancy is the main form of magic. He's searching out necromancers to compete and to become something called a lictor, which is basically like his right-hand people. And it comes with an elevation in power and status. Harrow says, Gideon, I will set you free if you come with me to this competition and you act as my cavalier, which is her swords person. So there's a necromancer and there's a cavalier, because Gideon doesn't have any magic, but she's a killer swordswoman. Very proud of her arms. So they go to this house and it essentially turns into a locked room murder mystery, but it's very weird. It's the weirdest book you'll probably read all year if you pick it up. But it's funny, it's dark, it's scary, it's weird, but it's not everyone's cup of tea. It has a voice. There's constant references and jokes. Like Tamsin Muir likes to take memes from the real world and pop them in different forms. And it's extremely amusing, and it hit me on every level, and I love it so much. But it's easy for me to see, you know, like if you don't appreciate humor, why you wouldn't like this. But also it is confusing. But not as confusing as a lot of people think it is, because for me at least, Gideon is such a strong character and a narrative presence that you don't need to understand everything that's going on. You just follow Gideon and you're fine. So anyway, let's look at the 1-star reviews. I hope I don't get mad about this one. If anyone insults Gideon, I will get mad. My disappointment is immeasurable and my day is ruined. Okay, dramatics. Did not finish at 95%? What is wrong with you? Finish the book at that point. Like, you've put in 95% of the work. That's an A. Get to the end, especially since the end is like one of the best parts. Oh my God. Okay, let's see. It has a lot of features that do not work for me as a reader. Okay. Not a big science fiction fan, not a horror fan, or a mystery fan. Well, okay, yeah, those are 3 of the big ingredients. But the book is so highly rated in the fantasy book community, and many reviewers who are usually good with said positive things, and he decided to give it a try. Okay, well, this person seems pretty reflective and knowledgeable about their taste, but he's wrong, because he goes on to say, but I found the writing style and characters to be, and I say this trying to be as kind as I possibly can, lies, absolutely abysmal. No, you just didn't like it, honey. Okay, this is what I'm talking about. Like, you can hate something in your soul and still acknowledge that it's good and that other people like it. Because what you're saying when you say this sucks, this is terrible, is that everyone who liked it is an idiot. That's what you're saying. Sometimes you mean to say that, and that's fine. But I feel like you have to know that's what you're saying. And like, sometimes people don't. Like, so I just want to be clear, when you say something like that, you're telling everyone else who liked it that they're an idiot. Let's see what else world building is shallow. No, it's not. There's a difference between shallow and you don't see everything. And purposefully, we don't see everything because this is meant to be, the world is meant to be as much of a mystery as what's actually going on in the plot. So if you would have made it to book 3, like the rest of us, you would know that the world makes absolute sense and has been world builded to hell. You just don't see it right away. So there's a difference. Gideon herself is most certainly in my top 3 least favorite POV characters in fantasy that I've ever read. Okay, well, you're done then. Bye. Let's move on. Okay, DNF. Okay. So in a quest to clear my currently reading shelf, force myself to return to this book. Why? Why did you do that? Don't do it, people. If you're ever forcing yourself to return to a book and nobody's pointing a gun at you, just rethink your actions and just put it down. It felt sort of heavy-handed and very hard to get through, confusing even. So now I read the whole Act 1, and while my opinion on the writing did not change, I started to lose a bit of my interest in the story. Maybe. Okay, well this person just wasn't interested. Okay. This person was a DNF also, and they're a YouTuber. Okay. This book suffers from the Tor hype, as did The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. No, those two couldn't be any different. Which I also highly disliked. The writing's a mess. Characters' names are Neo. No, they're not. The main character is an absolute ass. No, she's not. You shut your face. She gets out the chance to get off the planet and her literal response is, go suck a dick. It's funny. Do you know what funny is? It's funny. You know, okay, but seriously, Gideon uses humor as a way to keep herself sane in a terrible situation. And it is admirable of her that she can keep her spirits and be so kind and funny at the same time as living in that awful place. This book tried so hard to be edgy and goth. I don't think it was trying to be edgy and goth. I think Tamsin Muir just likes skulls. Don't agree with this person. I was gonna say something. Oh, hype. So let's talk about hype. Those of you who have been around my writing, I haven't talked about it on my channel yet, but I very much dislike the way that people use the word hype, because I always see it in the context of this book is overhyped. So what you're saying when you say that is that you don't believe that the people who have told you a thing is good actually liked it. That's what you're saying when you say that. This book is overhyped. No, it's not. Those people genuinely liked that book. They're loud because they loved it, okay? They told you to read it because they loved it. The hype is coming from a genuine place. Now, some books get more hype than others because of marketing budgets and stuff like that. And, you know, some of that is inflated. A book like Gideon, the hype is real because we feel fierce love. So it's not overhyped. It's the same as the other person who was really saying that you're stupid. You're saying that the people are stupid and that they don't know good things and that they lied to you. No, they didn't. They didn't lie to you. You just don't like the book. And it happens. It's happened to everyone. You read a book because you're curious, and then you say, oh, I don't like this. And then you get upset because everybody else loved it and you didn't. And the correct response to that would be to say, okay, well, why didn't I love it? Here's this thing and this thing and this thing. Not this book is overhyped. The problem isn't that people liked the book. The problem is that you didn't. Do you see what I'm saying? Anyway, I hate it. And every time somebody says something is overhyped, I immediately want to discount everything else that they're saying, because they're not reflective enough to understand that that's not actually what's going on. Hype doesn't come from nowhere. Even like all those really cringy, bad TikTok books that people make fun of because they're TikTok books, like those people on TikTok really love those books. Like maybe they don't have the most mature taste. I'm not going to go into it, but I know there's a lot of people who will instantly discount a book because it's popular on TikTok because they don't respect the people who are doing the recommending. I forgot the word. You know what I mean? See, I'm getting worked up. I knew this would happen. Let's do one more. So this person's review sounds promising. Fuck. I appreciate that. Gideon the Ninth was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I mean, how can I not get excited for lesbian necromancers in space with a fantasy feel? Yes, please. See, I'm the opposite. I didn't want to read it because necromancy is not something that interests me. And I'm not drawn to like goth shit like that other person said. In fact, that's not an aesthetic that I appreciate. So the fact that I love this book so much says something, that it's not just goth paint over a nothing underneath. Like, you know, this book has substance, it has style, it has a purpose. Oh no, there's a DNF. She only made it to 165 pages. Life is too short to waste on books that you aren't vibing with. I agree. I finally allowed myself to listen to my own advice lately. There are a fuck ton of books out there to fall in love with. Rather than continue to be a completionist and read books just for the sake of getting through it, it is perfectly okay to move on to something else if a book just isn't doing it for me these days. I agree. Again, hype. The hype machine is real with this book. Goddamn. Plus the finished hardcover with the sprayed edges is so fucking gorgeous. I didn't get sprayed edges. But I'm me. I wouldn't be me if I wasn't honest, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Angsty CW show that is trying wicked hard to be edgy. Okay, we're done. No, it's not. It's not trying to be edgy. Oh, people can't see past the surface. One more, and then we're done with this book. I don't get it. Okay. That's fine. I almost drowned in the snark and the clever, witty dialogue. I don't think it's trying to be clever. I think it's trying to be funny. And those are different. Anyway, moving on. I shouldn't have picked Gideon. I love it too much. Now here's one that I also love too much, but I feel like I'm going to be okay because it's like an acquired taste. So, and that's My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. So this is a book about Jade Daniels. She's a high school senior and she loves slashers. She lives in this town called Proof Rock, Idaho, and she's had a pretty traumatic life, and she has also dealt with being sort of abandoned by her community. She's a Blackfeet Indian, half Blackfeet, half white, and her mother left when she was a kid, leaving her with her dad, who was a not great person, and she has taken refuge in slasher films. Half the book is her point of view, and half of it is essays that she's written to her history teacher, Mr. Holmes, for extra credit on the history of the slasher. So the love that she has for these movies and what they mean to her just leaps off the page. And before I read this, I hated slashers. They're still not my favorite, but I mean, she single-handedly converted me, / Stephen Graham Jones, and his love for these movies made me see the value in them. Anyway, but the plot of the book is that Jade, amidst her trauma, has decided, or because she's seen clues, that a real-life slasher is happening in her town. And so she takes it upon herself to find the final girl and train her up. And she gets convinced that it's this new beautiful girl called Letha. And the plot goes from there. It's very stream of consciousness. Jade's disconnection from real life and her trauma mean that it can be sort of confusing. And if you don't like her voice, you're not going to like the book. But it was such a unique read. And by the end, I was so in love with Jade, not like romantic love, but like just as a person, like I wanted to mother her. Those of you who watched my March wrap up, you know that I gave 5 stars to the sequel, and it perfectly bookended for me Jade's character growth. So yeah, so that's this book. Let's look at the reviews. Oh, by the way, I'm sweaty. I wish I had a ceiling fan right here. No, oh boy. The writing isn't bad, but the plot was, to me, terrible. For a story that revolves around killing, there wasn't much in the way of menace happening. You're just mostly stuck in a loop of babbling nonsense. And that's because you have to live inside of Jade's head for the entire book as she gushes and giggles and talks nonstop about slasher films. Jade Daniels has never giggled in her f***ing life. Also, the point of the book isn't the killing. So this person went in looking for the wrong thing is what's happening. It's a character study. It's not really, I mean, it does sort of turn into a slasher by the end, but it's a book about slashers, not a slasher itself, in my opinion. The heart of the story is Jade and her character arc. So if you're looking for a high body count, you might get it at the end a little bit, but mostly it's Jade. She's the star of the story. Yeah, this person just wants kills. Like, that's boring to me. I would much rather have a book where there's barely no murdering at all, and it's got substance and heart and things to say. And this book has that. I don't understand people, I mean, I know they exist, who just surface level want violence. It's not interesting to me. Oh dear, how was this book not for me? Horror, yes please. Homage to slasher movies, yes please. A girl with a fascination for her slasher fix who believes a slasher is coming to her hometown, yes. Yes please to all of it. The spiel sounded so good, sounded like so much fun. You're writing in sentence fragments, my friend. The experience was far from it. This book is extremely slow. Mind-numbingly so. Very long chapters with walls of text as we spend time in our main protagonist's mind. References to slasher movies, which are fun at the start, but nearly every second page has a reference to them, and it soon becomes old. Yeah, if you can't put up with the slasher references, things move at a snail's pace as Jade goes about her day with a combination of imagining herself in a slasher movie and trying to figure out what may be coming. Her every thought is put down on the page. Yeah, it's stream of consciousness. That's what that is. Page after page of not a hell of a lot. 2/3 of this book are mind-numbingly boring and slow. And yeah, this person, same thing. They don't want depth. They want... this wasn't what I thought. I don't know what this was, and I don't care. Next. Temper tantrum GIF. I had high hopes for this due to all the positive reviews I've seen, but this is up there with the most boring books I've ever read. It was so slow, the dialogue terrible. What? The writing is all over the place. Awful. Okay, that doesn't mean anything to me. Like, if you're gonna say the writing is awful, please explain to me what you mean. You just didn't like it. Again, with people not being self-reflective, you just didn't like it. It's fine. Something doesn't have to be bad for you not to like it. I don't like okra. I don't like raw fish. That doesn't mean that people can't like sushi or hush puppies. Saying it right off the bat, this is a story about a girl. Okay, this person spoils the plot. It is a spoiler. Don't spoil things that come 75-80% of the way into the book. That's really bad, and you're a jerk. I'm disgusted about you. I mean, I understand that they were triggered, and maybe Stephen Graham Jones should put content warnings. It is polite to do content warnings, but I don't know, maybe he's old. He's older. He doesn't know. You shouldn't spoil the plot. Like, why don't you just put in the content warnings of your review, trigger warning, blah, blah, blah. And then people can ignore it if they don't want to know. You spoiled the book, you're a dick. Sorry. Also, I don't think the book was billed as a slasher. So all of these people getting upset that it's not a slasher. Yeah, listen to this. Does this sound like a slasher to you? This new novel by the New York Times bestselling author of The Only Good Indians, Stephen Graham Jones, called one of our most talented living writers by Tommy Orange, a lit fic author, explores the changing landscape of the West through his distinct voice of sharp humor and prophetic violence. Exploring the changing landscape of the West. Does that sound like a slasher to you? A logical mess. I'm sorry I can't go on reading this book. There are too many common sense issues in just the first few pages. Common sense in a horror. Two young people go skinny dipping in an Idaho mountain lake in March when there's still snow on the ground. Forget about anything scary in the water. You die from the cold. Okay, has this person never seen a horror movie? Like, yeah, kids do stupid shit, but like, he is paying homage to slasher movies. And if you've ever seen a slasher movie, there's always like, or there frequently is like a scene at the beginning to set the tone where two idiots or a group of idiots, and they're frequently young, do something stupid like skinny dipping in a frozen lake in March. And then they die. And that's what happens at the beginning of this book, is these two Swedish tourists are skinny dipping in this lake and they're killed by something. And that's how the book kicks off. And that's deliberate. That's very deliberate, because that and scenes like it have happened in like every slasher ever made. I know that, and I'm not even like well-versed in the genre. Why are you talking about logic with this? It's not about logic. It's about, this is what you're going to get in this book. That's setting the tone. Anyway, rich people drive up and leave their cars at the pier. Okay, this makes sense. But what doesn't are the models of car left at the pier? Why are you talking about car models? No one drives an Aston Martin or a Maserati into the mountains to get to their vacation home. You don't know that. You absolutely do not know that. Rich people are stupid. They have money. They can do whatever they want. Land Rover equals yes. Collector sports car equal no. Okay, you don't know anything. You don't know that. You can't just say people don't do this thing when there are probably lots of people who do that. There's no storage space in a sports car to bring up your bags. This doesn't make sense. Why is this what they're focusing on? This has nothing to do with the book. Sports cars are for the joy of driving. Does this person just want to read a book about a car? Also, with all this talk of rich people coming into town, there's no mention of the supporting businesses rich people expect, like restaurants and shopping, or even a good grocery store. The economy of this town doesn't make sense. What is happening in this review? What is happening? I mean, like, do you think that the authors have to sit there and tell you all the buildings and businesses in town before you'll believe that something is realistic? Like, should there be a note at the beginning of the book saying, in this town, there is a Whole Foods. In this town, there is a 5-star restaurant where you can buy steak and oysters. 2 ways up the road is a luxury hotel. There's a mom and pop grocery store down there. I mean, what do they want? What do they want? How do we know there's not any of this stuff? We just assume that it's there, of course. What is happening? What's going on? Oh my God. This person isn't even focusing on things that are relevant to the book. The descriptions of past fashion say a decade old, but then mention shoulder pads. What decade is this? Shoulder pads were in the 80s, not the 2010s. Is this supposed to take place in the 90s? Well, okay. First of all, there are still people who wear shoulder pads, and also they're coming back. Has this person never been to a small town? Family live in a small town in Ohio, and when you go there, it's like stepping back in time 15 years, basically. So it makes sense to me that in 2015, people hadn't caught up yet. If you came of age in the 80s and you were an adult in the 80s, like in 20s and 30s, yeah, you might still be wearing shoulder pads. Some people don't like change. But regardless, this has nothing to do with the quality of the book or the story or the characters. Jade watches movies on tape, which would be super hard to get these days. DVDs are easy and cheap, but not tapes. This person knows nothing and they think they know everything. This is a mansplainer. I'm going to move on. Okay, one more. Wow, really hating this. Punishing to read. I love horror film, but I hate horror nerds. The paradox of the long-suffering me. I deserve better. Do you? Slow and boring, slow and boring. That's the crux of this. Okay, let's do one more because this person feels very strongly that they bolded and italicized something. I really, really dislike The Only Good Indians. Then why did you read this book? But this synopsis made me want to give Stephen Graham Jones another shot. Fine, I do that too. I love horror movies, especially slashers, and I've been in the mood for some meta horror the last couple of weeks after watching the new Fear Street films on Netflix. So I started this with relatively low expectations but high hopes, and I hated it. I remain utterly, entirely baffled by the positive notices here. They're reviews, John. When I tell you nothing happens for the first 50-60% of this absurdly overlong book, I mean nothing happens. Well, I don't think that you actually mean that because I could literally sit here and tell you everything that happens in the book right now. Do you want me to tell you what happens? Let me tell you what happens. Anyway, that's what happens in this book, okay? Things happen. Mostly it's interior, but things are happening. You just didn't care about the things that were happening. You wanted people to be right. When people say something, nothing happens. Stuff is happening. You just might not be wanting it to be that stuff. Okay, I'm getting too worked up now, so we're gonna move on. All right, so next book. Oh my God, we're at 47 minutes. I'm gonna have to seriously cut this down. Next book is Fellowship of the Ring. So I was gonna do the whole Lord of the Rings trilogy with my lovely fancy book, which by the way, this is a cutout. Look at it, look at it, look at it. That's Sauron's eye. Anyway, I was going to do the whole series like as a trilogy, but then I figured like most of the bad reviews are just going to be for Fellowship of the Ring because people aren't going to probably have made it, at least most people aren't going to have made it past that first book who hated it. They're certainly not going to read all of this. And they're more likely to have left their review on the first book rather than this one as a whole. So that's what we're going to look at is Fellowship of the Ring. And we've got my nifty little 1960s copies that I have. This is one of my all-time favorite series, but I do understand that Tolkien's style is not for everyone. So as long as that's the complaint, I'll be fine. But if they start coming after like other stuff, we'll see what happens. Read the review by Doc Opp. No, I'm reading your review. I think he covers it quite nicely. He explains how, okay, he's just recapping somebody else's review at this point. He explains how Tolkien was the forefather of fantasy writing and why that makes his books important. He also shares his opinion that the historical importance sort of causes people to overlook that Tolkien couldn't write worth beans. False. What is your evidence? Opp posits that perhaps it has something to do with the concept of heroism being different in Tolkien's days than it is now. I'm not sure I agree with that. I mean, I agree that his character is a study in perseverance without being able to really fight or do anything but persevere. I just don't know that I buy that it's a sign of the times. I think Tolkien was just boring. I mean, he was a nerd who loved languages, but he had things to say about environmentalism, about war, about friendship, about the bonds that are created in war between people, about trauma and PTSD, like the whole scouring of the Shire and what ends up happening to Frodo. Like, he had things to say. This isn't just like an empty adventure book. This is a book about very serious subjects. That's why it stood this test of time, is because it speaks to people. I don't disagree also that the Shannara series is essentially the same storyline with a better writer at the helm. Oh my God, I'm not going to touch that. I'm not going to touch it. It's the same storyline because the author just cribbed it. My venom towards Tolkien is greater than Opp's. Why does this person keep talking about somebody else's review? I don't want to read somebody else's review as homework before I read your review. I should be able to read your review alone and be able to understand myself, dude. I have very little patience with writers who have great ideas or imaginations when it comes to the physical world, but can't get inside the head of a person to save their lives and thus can't tell a story. This sort of writer is often found in sci-fi fantasy because the genre is geared to reward the most innovative and plausible inventing of a future or past timescape. Okay, I'm just going to disagree with him. The characters in Lord of the Rings are, I mean, it may not be a close first person. It's definitely a more storytelling style that's further removed from the characters, like you're not in their heads, but it is very clear who they are and what they're about and what they want from their dialogue. Also, he focused extensively on the landscape because the landscape in these books is a stand-in also, or parallels the journey of the characters. So if you look at the landscape, it will echo what is going on in the hearts and minds of the characters. I'm going to move on from this person. I don't understand the phenomenon around this series. I find it slow, long, and boring. It's not for me. Short and succinct. Okay, no one can say that I didn't give Lord of the Rings a good try. I read The Hobbit. It was okay. Watched the first Hobbit movie. Again, okay. Those don't deserve to be compared together. I tried to watch the first Lord of the Rings movie 3 times, but fell asleep each time and just read Fellowship of the Ring. It's not my thing. And even though it's okay for it not to be my thing, it's one of those things where if you don't like it, people are all up in arms saying, what do you mean? It's a classic. Well, that's not a good argument. I agree with her there. That's just because it's a classic doesn't mean you should like it. That's dumb. If you don't like this, you don't like true literature, fantasy, etc. If anyone says that, they're full of shit. Don't you know a good film when you see it? And similar pretentiousness. I agree with her here. But I disagree that the movie's boring. It's so interesting. I'm not going to be a sheeple and I'm not going to lie. What the heck? It drags. Yeah, okay, they're not a nerd. They're not a nerd. They're not my kind of person. I give up. I fucking give up. After 4 weeks of struggling through this book, I've decided life is too short. How it ever became a beloved classic is beyond me, clearly. I tried so hard. I trudged, and trudged. Don't trudge through things, guys. If you're trudging, stop. What happens when you are trudging and you stop is that you save yourself the torture of pushing through something you don't like, and you save the people who love that thing the torture of reading your thoughts. Laden with Tolkien's flowery prose and bogged down in descriptions and details. Okay, I guess we could call Tolkien's prose flowery, but I would say it's just more old-fashioned and people aren't used to reading old-fashioned things anymore that are written like this. Blah, blah, blah. I did watch the movies years ago and loved them very much. Okay, so this person just doesn't like Tolkien's writing style. Perhaps I'd try the audiobook. Am I Not Merciful? Okay, they must have written that on their phone because it's supposed to be Am I Not Merciful? Okay, one more because I'm getting tired. And it's at 54 minutes. Ancient non-governmental organization conspires to commit perhaps the ultimate act of terrorism in world literature by setting up a crack cosmopolitan team to destroy the primary resource of the predominant sovereignty in the setting, which team includes 4 barefoot ragamuffins with a taste for the sweet leaf, 4 worthless aristocratic sons placed therein as nepotistic favors, and a pious graybeard who gets ganked in his first fight. That's hilarious. Oh, I got presents. Okay, he's gone. All right, that review is everything. So I'm just gonna leave it there. And let's go on to our last book, which is Project Hail Mary. This book, I love it so much. I love The Martian, and I loved what he did with being able to create so much tension and excitement and humor and goodwill and love for that character as he did with just like one person alone on a planet. But in this one, we get character interactions, we get friendship. I still maintain this is a book about friendship and the ties between people and what that can do for you. But it's also just a really fun time. It's really good. And anyone who dislikes it, I fundamentally do not understand them as a person. I just don't understand how you could read this book and not come away filled with love and joy for the world. So let's look and see what people don't like. Andy Weir cannot write, and I'm tired of people pretending he can. Okay, this is one of those things that people write because it sounds clever, but if you actually stop to think about what she's implying, I'm not pretending that I love this book. I love this book. Other people are not pretending that they love this book. They love this book. I'm sure many people, including myself, read this book and understand that the main draw isn't the prose. The prose in Andy Weir's books, dialogue I love. I love it. It's funny. So I do think that he can write in terms of humor and crafting like that kind of stuff because he's very funny. But he's not like lit ficking all over the place. He's not meditating on symbols. He's not using like complex constructions and playing with form and or whatever the heck else literary authors do. Of course he's not doing that. He's writing a fun adventure book set in space that's meant to make you laugh and keep turning pages and feel good at the end. And it does all of that stuff. It does it all. So what's happening is this person is bitter that they can't have fun with everyone else. And they've turned their bitterness into an insult. That's what I think. Nobody's pretending. We know that he's not like, who's an author whose writing I admire? I don't really care about good writing, so this is a hard question for me to answer. I don't know, like N.K. Jemisin, or who's like a literary, or George R.R. Martin, or who's a literary sci-fi author that I could name drop? Ursula K. Le Guin, whose writing I find very tedious, by the way. Whatever, you get my point, okay? First, let's talk about characters. Well, there is no character here. I only see a vague man-shaped science textbook in an astronaut suit. Wait, let me put my glasses on. Oh, I know him. Quirky, wisecracking nerd who likes space. It's Mark Watney. Okay, Mark Watney and Ryland Grace are both snarky, but they are very different people. Now, I also acknowledge that Andy Weir's ability to create characters is not as great as other authors, but the characters that are there are entertaining, they're likable, and he also is working on his characters, because Mark Watney was like the perfect human being. He had no flaws. He was nice to everybody. Everybody liked him. He was smart. He was resourceful. He was funny. He had nothing. He was brave. He took his punches and he got back up again every time. Just like perfect man. But he did it with a humor so people don't come after him. Also, he's a man. Ryland Grace is not Mark Watney. He is not brave. He doesn't take his punches and then get back up again. And the only reason he doesn't give up is because he has somebody, slight spoilers, he has somebody there with him to help him and to boost him up. And he does go through a change through the book, because at the beginning of the book, spoilers, I'm going to spoil a key plot point. It won't hurt your enjoyment, okay? But I'm going to spoil this to make my point. And my point is that Ryland is a coward. He is tapped for this mission and he refuses to go because he doesn't want to die. He's not able to, like Mark Watney did, put himself out of the equation and do what's good and right. He doesn't do that. He's very human in that way. He's scared to die and he's a bit of a coward and he runs away. And the only way they get him on the ship is with trickery. They literally drug him and put him on the ship without his consent and shoot the rocket into space. And when he wakes up, he doesn't have any memory because they erased his memories of like the last whatever amount of time. So he doesn't know that he was too scared to come on the trip. So it's a surprise to him even that he was a huge coward. And he only ended up on the ship because other people violated his constitutional rights or whatever. So he's very different. And then by the end, again, I'm spoiling, by the end, after he has built this lovely bond of friendship and love and trust with Rocky, the alien, he makes the hard choice. He's saved. He's on his way home and he stops the ship and he turns around to go rescue his friend, even though he knows it's probably a death sentence and he absolutely knows he will never get home again. So there is a character arc there. You're just not wanting to see it because you don't like Andy Weir's style and you're butthurt about it. I didn't do a very good job picking books that I wouldn't get upset about. Okay, let's move on to another review. That one's way too long for somebody who didn't like the book. A dude is left alone in deep space after losing his crewmates, but the dude is a scientist and manages to find a smart solution to every problem he encounters in such an unfriendly environment. You say this sounds like The Martian. Nope, this is the new novel by Andy Weir, and it is a bad book, badly written. All right. Are we going after other books for having formulas like this? Or are we just going after it because it's popular and you want to set yourself apart and make yourself feel good for bashing on things that people love? I think for people like this, we need to question our motives a little bit and say, why am I doing this? Am I doing this because it's easy and will give me a dopamine hit and get me likes? Or am I doing this because I genuinely believe it? I bet if we went to this person's bookshelves, there would be at least one genre of book on there that has a formula. Nobody ever said formulas were bad. Formulas work. Why do you think romance is the best-selling genre right now and forever? Not forever, but for a long time. It has a formula and people like that comfort. There's nothing wrong with Andy Weir doing something that he knows he's good at, and it's just different enough to be good, to be fine in my opinion, but I don't think it should even matter. If you didn't like it, that's fine, but there's nothing wrong with going for a formula. There's nothing wrong with it. Controversial. It's a bad book because the plot is so blatantly implausible to be silly. Okay, it's not that implausible. Does this person read science fiction? Every single science fiction book I've ever read is wildly implausible. The author must think that stuffing every page with loads of scientific data and explanations makes a story plausible, except it does not. It's fiction. We know it's not real. It's fun. The continued quirkiness of the smart-arse narrating voice after a while started getting to me, and in the long run it detracted from the seriousness of the story. Nope. Okay, this bothers me because one of my very favorite things in the world is when there are contrasting tones in a book. Like side-by-side humor with dire circumstances. I live for that shit. There's nothing wrong with it. In a movie, such effect would be nice, counterbalanced by breathtaking deep space images, like in The Martian. In a book, that is all you get, and the result was annoying. Well, this person's probably one of those people that can't picture things while they read, because I had deep space images in my head the whole time. That's not really a valid criticism. I do not like this space book because it is a book and I couldn't see the space. Character development is a most common deficit in sci-fi, but Hail Mary touches a new low. Plentiful carton board and cliches. What is a carton board? Okay, look, dude. If you're gonna come for an entire genre, you better be able to back it up. How many sci-fi books have you read? See, clearly this person doesn't read sci-fi because they said earlier about that other thing. And now they're saying that there's no characters in sci-fi. Has he read all of them? All of the sci-fi ever published? He's read them all and he knows there's no characters? Really? Who's doing all this stuff? Oh my God, I'm glad. Also, science is fun. If you don't like it, fine, but people like it. I like science. Okay, one more and then I'm done because we're at 106 and I gotta edit the shit out of this. So I know people seem to be loving this book, but I don't really get it. It's a less good version of The Martian. I disagree, except with aliens. What do you mean except with aliens? They're a key portion. Aliens that Mark Watney cough. I mean Ryland Grace. Okay, it really bothers me when everybody makes the same joke about something and they act like they're the first person to ever do that. It really bothers me. I mean, Ryland Grace is able to communicate with through an absurd degree of simplicity. It wasn't that simple. Also, like, it's perfectly fine to have to suspend your disbelief for a speculative fiction book. You can do it easily with like other stuff, I bet. I bet if I went to this person's bookshelf, they would have like stuff that makes no logical sense whatsoever, but they like it, so it's fine. A shared understanding of mathematics and science that is amazingly similar to Western ideas. Well, yeah, Andy Weir's a Western author with a Western brain. What are you gonna do about it? Relatively minor differences in cultural norms, not true, despite having completely different body structures. Also, like, stop and think a minute. If there's something that you don't like about a book, like, I always try to sit back and think, well, why did the author do this? Does it have a purpose? And sometimes it helps me appreciate whatever the thing is I'm not liking. And in this case, the point of the book is that he found somebody that he could have a true friendship with across vast cultural differences, but also that life is life and a person and a friend can come in any shape. The point is that there's so many similarities, but while there's also so many differences. And like, fine if you don't like that, but again, nothing wrong with it. Blah, blah, blah. Feels like Mark Watney. Okay, I just want to find one more good one and then I'm done. It's a bad book. And the only thing that kept me from throwing it away was Ray Porter's lively narration. Ray Porter does do a great job on the narration on the audiobook. But even he didn't prevent me from abandoning the book with an hour left. Oh my God, dude, you got that far? Why? Okay, like, I'm a proponent of DNFing, but like, do it early, man. If you're not liking, just get out of there. If you're gonna make it that far, just keep going. You missed like, you got that much, finish it. At first I thought the book was quite engaging and intriguing. Then a few hours in, I've realized prose isn't going to get better and there will be absolutely no plot apart from the repetitive cycle of something breaks, Grace fixes it, something goes wrong, Grace sorts it, something breaks, Grace fixes it. Okay, so there's a thing that people do when they don't like something where they take it and they break it down into its most basic components as if that's supposed to be an insult. But I'm like, you could literally do that with everything. Like, you could literally do that with any book that you like. You could be like, well, that's all this is. And it's a reduction and it doesn't make any sense because There's not just Grace breaking something and then fixing it. There is so much more to the book than that. And all of that stuff is important. So reducing it to that is like deliberately obscuring things from other people that would be important context to have. You know what I mean? Maybe you don't. Maybe I'm just blabbering because I'm tired and my voice is going. The voice in which the book is written is unbearable. Oh no, gosh darn it, something has broken again. Let me science in a really awesome, super cool way. Oh no, I'm definitely gonna die. Never mind, I scienced super hard and now I'm happy, happy, happy. Okay, this is the book. I'm really not exaggerating that much. Okay, I skipped a paragraph and we're gonna go there and then we're gonna be done. When the big reveal comes about regarding Grace's sacrifice, I could not care less. The main character was so lifeless, uninteresting, and devoid of personality, motivation, and self-reflection. His story arc, which they spelled it like the boat, fell completely flat. The book feels like it's written by a serious hobbyist who likes to imagine what it would be like to use his rudimentary knowledge to survive a space adventure. That's because it was written by a serious hobbyist who wanted to know what it would like to survive a serious space adventure. And that's what we're all doing as readers too. We want to put our imaginations to use and imagine what it would be like to try and survive a serious space adventure. I'm not sure what his point is. It's juvenile. This is why I wanted to read it. Dull and painfully repetitive. Okay, I've been guilty of this in the past. In fact, I believe I just used the word the other day. But it's really not a great criticism when you call something juvenile. It's really not, because what you're doing is assigning a moral value to something and using youth as an insult. That's not an insult. There is absolutely nothing wrong with an adventure story. And you saying that you find it to be juvenile is insulting, and it shows a really deep lack of imagination in you. Pick another way to say that you don't like the book other than calling it juvenile, because that really just says more about you than it does the book. Why did you think it was juvenile? Was it the humor? I guess you think that adults can't be funny? I'm just guessing here because you did not provide me with any information that I could actually use to decide if this is a book for me or not. Juvenile, what does that mean? Also, I like children's books. I like young adult if it's written well. What are we going for here? Other than to say, I am a grown-ass adult and I'm better than you. I just want to find one more review that's like short and sweet. I don't think there is one. I think there's just people pontificating. So I think we're done. I didn't do as great as I thought that I would. I did not do that great in being objective and not upset by these reviews. And I've lost my voice, or I'm losing my voice. Yeah, I'm gonna go edit this now, I guess. And we'll see how it turns out. I'll probably have to edit out some stuff where I feel like it went too far, or if I was mean, because I don't want to be mean. But sometimes you just get emotional and you're like, pfft. And I'm sure that some of my critiques of these people come off as, and somebody can sit down and be like, critiquing my critique of their critique. Anyway, okay, we're now at 1:14. I'm done. If you made it this far, thank you. And I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope I didn't make anyone mad. If anyone dislikes these books, you can out yourself in the comments if you want, but I will be sad. So if you like the video, please don't forget to leave me a like and subscribe if you wanna. And then if you made it this far, please leave me alien or a rocket emoji for Project Hail Mary. And I will see you in the next one. Farewell.